We know your time is valuable.
That's why we've created processes to keep your job running smooth.
We know you expect 5-star service.
That's why we're committed to delivering 7-star.
We know it's your home and your choice.
That's why we provide options and let you choose the right solution for your home. Experience the LCS way with LCS Heating and Cooling at lcsheatingandcooling.com.
Outside the Forecast on WTHR Plus is sponsored by LCS Heating and Cooling.
Hey everyone, this is Sean Ash here on Outside the Forecast. This week we're going to talk about, because I'm sure you have probably seen it full of your social media feeds, Super El Niño, exactly what it is and what it could mean for us. Let's talk about why you're seeing it on your feeds, and that's because recently some of the NOAA forecasters are forecasting a Super El Niño event to develop in the coming months. Now, if that were to take place, mind you, here we are, in the middle of April. There's a long way to go. But it would have significant impact on the tropics and in winter weather, perhaps here across the lower 48. Now, how rare are these events? Well, since 1950, we've only had 3, and I'll kind of run down that. But let me kind of get into what we're discussing here. We're focusing on the Pacific equatorial waters, okay? And more importantly, the temperature of those waters. In what we call a neutral phase, the trade winds are just behaving normally, east to west, so just off the coast of South America here. And those water temperatures are near to slightly below normal, and that leads to typical activity in the Eastern Pacific, as well as the Caribbean and the Atlantic here, okay? Now, we do sometimes get into what we call a La Nina event, and that is a cooling of those waters below normal temperatures, which creates stronger trade winds. In that type of activity or setup, we get much more wind shear on the East Pacific, and that leads to less hurricane activity. And conversely, there's less wind shear in the Caribbean, and that typically leads to more hurricane activity. So what is expected at minimum is an El Nino event to develop. But in this case, the modeling is suggesting something called a Super El Nino, so significant warming of this water. That would lead to weaker trade winds in this part of the globe, and if that is the case, that would mean less wind shear, more activity in this zone here in the East Pacific, but higher wind shear in the Caribbean. So we've noticed that during strong El Nino or very strong, which is Super El Nino events, we get less hurricane activity. So that could be a good byproduct, at least for that particular zone. So let me show you about some of the events that we have had over the last several years and what that, again, would do. So in terms of El Nino impacts on temperatures during the winter months, we would usually get a more of a warmer than normal. Now, we've got cooler than normal over the southern tier, and that's because we're getting this moisture feed, we're getting this southern jet that's very active typically, and we get more storm action during the winter months, and it becomes wetter than normal in that zone. Drier than normal typically is what occurs in a strong to very strong. Not every single El Nino event behaves that way, but in general, that's what we're looking down. So I want to show you this graph courtesy of NOAA. Okay, this is on the top when you get these spikes, those are El Nino events. And when you get the spikes below, those are the La Nina events here. This is 1982-83. We've got 2015 or 97-98 and 2015 and 2016. Those are the 3 what we are labeled as very strong or Super El Niño events. So since 1950, those are the only three recorded Super El Niño events. You can see we've had several weak, moderate. I've focused more on the strong and very strong and what those impacts have been to central Indiana winters. And you can see just recently 2023 and 2024. So what did those bring to us here locally? So for instance, when I'm using the months too, by the way, when we describe winter, we're using December, January, and February. During those 3 months, we typically get around 21 inches of snow. You can see during strong El Niño events, every single one of them distributed well below average snowfall. In fact, you can see back in 2023-24, we had just around 8 inches of snow. Now, average temperature during those months, usually in the ballpark of about 31 degrees. You can see there's kind of a spread in temperatures. The last strong El Niño event there, though, did produce well above average temperatures. Likewise in 91 and 92. How about the very strong El Niño, the Super El Niños? What were those winters like? I found it interesting that 82-83 had the 9th least snowiest winter for us. 97-98 was the 6th least snowiest. And 2015-16 was still well below average on the snow. In terms of temperatures, way above average. Remember that 30 is 31 degrees. Okay, so it's a small sample size when you think, go back to 1950, but it does give us a gauge for the potential if this thing does become a full-fledged Super El Niño, that we could be talking about little snow and much warmer temperatures. But again, we're talking many months away. So keep in mind, sometimes a 24-hour forecast is difficult enough. We are talking about months away. It is forecast to develop. There is still a very high uncertainty on how strong it will be and if it does truly develop, okay? This is also just one piece of what we call the teleconnection forecast puzzle. There are many areas of the globe that ultimately will dictate what will happen here during those winter months. And the bottom line is we just have to stay tuned. But we do know that, yes, if this turns into a Super El Niño event, if you're a snow lover, locally that may not be a good thing for you here, as it tends to give us well below average snow and well above average temperature. Stay tuned. We will check back on this as we get into the fall, see where it stands and see where we're going. We appreciate you tuning in here on WTHR Plus and Outside the Forecast.
Outside the Forecast on WTHR Plus is sponsored by LCS Heating and Cooling.